Welcome to another episode of Navigating Your Unretired Life. Today, we're going to be talking about seizing the entrepreneurial advantage. There's a real advantage to changing one's mindset and pursuing things in a really positive way. So, without further ado, here we go. So, we're talking about this episode's promise of seizing the entrepreneurial advantage. We're recognizing that today's issues are huge challenges. However, the entrepreneurial advantage involves seeing today's issues as huge opportunities in disguise. We'll talk about that and how people are doing it. We're going to be sharing resources to help you succeed with your own transformation as you navigate your unretired life. So it's about how to address Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's Abraham Maslow. Amazing. He's actually the father of humanistic psychology. And he really sought to say, hey, what makes up the whole mindset, the whole psyche of human beings? And he has this whole hierarchy. And it starts with meeting physiological needs of air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. And then the kind of the roof of your head, the safety needs, personal security, uh, employment, or if before you had employment, you had hunting and gathering and all that, resources that were important for your health, and then property. And that's changed a little bit because people didn't have the same sense of property. They belonged to the earth instead of possessing the earth, possessing the land and ordering it off and all that as nations and all that. So, and then it's about love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection, esteem, self esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom, and the desire to become the most that you can be. And Abraham Maslow didn't think a lot of people had really reached that stage. He mentioned a few, Abraham Lincoln, Mother Teresa, and people like that. He did mention Dr. Martin Luther King, who I think was a very self-actualized person as much as he could do this. So this is really the question is, how are you dealing with these needs as you navigate your retired or your unretired life? How are you thinking about addressing your hierarchy of needs? Just as huge challenges as you age. I'm 79 and I'm discovering new ways to express myself in positive ways. And I'm going to share that with you. One of the resources I recently found through my faith community, a unity community, and there was a little pamphlet called Blacks in Unity. And one of the authors mentioned this book that inspired them by Sharif Abdullah, Creating a World That Works for All. And it's pretty interesting. Um, he is a guy who grew up in poverty in one of the world's worst cities, Camden, New Jersey, and he, was trying to live his life. But also at that time, there was a Unity Church that probably reached out to the African American community and said, "Let's do something different. Let's create a world that's inclusive." And so that inspired his envision of an inclusive world. He went on to become an attorney and started settling in the Portland area. I plan on reaching out to him about this book, which was written in 1999 at the kind of at the beginning of the 21st century. I think it was kind of historic moment in terms of seeing this as a new opportunity to make world better. And he has this vision for inclusivity as opposed to the nightmare of a world on the brink. And boy, if you watch the news, you really do get a sense of that with the nuclear proliferation and all the wars and oh man, the Middle East, Gaza, the Israeli Gaza conflict and just the whole thing of looking at what's going to happen with Russia and them trying to take over. So I just think this is really an important thing here. But he says the way to deal with this is through the practice, spirit and practice of inclusivity. And he has a new analysis for a new society. I think it was really, really positive. And the first thing I think it really speaks to me is to stop blaming others. As long as you have a conflict with multiple parties, you all are the problem, and you all need to work on the resolution, not to fight it out, but to really establish some peace. And he talks about the story about how things got to be this way. And there's a lot of opinions about that, but he talks about this and he breaks it up into these three parts. I'll talk about that later. But this revolution to inclusivity has to do with first an internal revolution that happens within the individual, within you, thinking about your life and getting quiet and finding that center, and the external revolution of practicing what you've learned, what you believe in, and making the commitment to make a change as what they call a mender of society, as opposed to being a breaker of society. And so, really, if you look at his the arc of his storytelling in his book, it's really like a hero's journey. In his book, Creating a World That Works for all, his story, there's the group of people, the keepers, kind of indigenous cultures, and before the advent of imperialism and capitalism and all of that. And then you had the breakers, the idea of a manifest destiny that said, oh, you got all this land out here. We need the land, and, we're entitled to it and all that kind of stuff. The breakers, and kind of a separation, an exclusive separation of properties and people and all that. And then there's the new generation, the menders, the ones who, I don't mean new just by young people, but people who now have come to consciousness to say, we need to fix this stuff. We need to mend this society. We need to mend our ways with a new perspective. So he has a really great little story here that I think is pretty instructive. And he said it's really a true story, evidently. On Christmas Day in 1776, British explorer Captain Cook arrived at Kerguelen Island, a Connecticut-sized land covered with grass in the Indian Ocean. Then he had the bright idea of releasing a few rabbits that would multiply and provide fresh meat. And so, of course, the rabbits in a favorable environment with no predators multiplied. But then, after eating every single blade of grass, they died by the hundreds. The problem of being in rabbit heaven, all the sex they wanted and all the food that they could eat with no predators ended up being unsustainable. And he posits the idea that maybe if they had been an ecologically smarter rabbit among their midst, he would have told them they needed to change their thinking and, of course, their story. They actually needed some coyotes and owls and other predators control the population and create a more sustainable biome. The problem was one of unsustainable exclusivity. There's an interesting analogy one can make for our current situation. He then proceeds to do some comparative storytelling. The first story he talks about is the Nazi story, 1937 on and on. It was elitist rather than inclusive. It was based on consensual lies rather than on authenticity. It was dependent on the existence of a scapegoat, the Jews, the gypsies, anybody that he considered as non-Aryan, non-white. Um, those were the problem, supposedly. And it was unsustainable because it was based on a constant expansion of military and political power. And it had positive, creative, and adaptive aspects, but they were for the elite only. And this was tragically practical, but on the short run, it was horribly tragic. As opposed to seven elements of a successful story. Now we're going through a whole, people have talked about this whole era right now in 2025 is one of fascism and authoritarianism, and with many of these things here. But let's compare what he says a new successful story could be. It needs to be inclusive. It has a positive role for every individual and every group. It's authentic. Its values and actions must be in harmony with nature and the human spirit. And it's spiritual in nature. The story must articulate and demonstrate transcendent values and beliefs. It must include roles for the spirits, ancestors, and other invisible beings, depending upon one's religion or belief system. And that's really interesting. So, a lot of people do not have that belief system anymore. They've maybe been turned off by their religious experience at institutions, and they kind of feel like they're alone and that there's nothing transcendent beyond what they're able to do. And this one is scapegoat free. There's no person or group that's made to be a repository of blame or condemnation. And then the story has to be sustainable. And he has to kind of his whole test must prove the test of the seventh generation. It will produce benefits and cause no harm for seven generations in the future. Well, wow. This is kind of interesting that what he was thinking about then, seven generations. Wow. And it had to be positive, creative, and adaptive. The story has to be able to evolve with emerging conditions and events that he didn't know that could happen. It had to be practical and implementable. The story can be enacted now without extraordinary innovations, without contact with space aliens or materials such as cheap, safe, inexhaustible fuel. But note, this thinking was pre-solar. We hadn't had the whole solar energy explosion and cost reduction as a form of cheap, safe, inexhaustible fuel. And he really, within his whole thinking, is this unity, these 12 powers. You don't have to be a member of the unity faith community, but you can recognize the power of these 12 powers as faith by believing in something higher than yourself that is good, that you're moving towards. The strength in that, the strength that we have individually and as a people, the wisdom of generations. Wow. And the wisdom across genders, across races, across communities, across the market sector. This is really important. And the love that is understood and recognized in life. If you look in nature and you look at the beauty and the way that we were conceived in the miracle of birth and of the planets and the forces that made the earth with food and air. You got to believe that there was some amazing intelligence and some love at work here. It wasn't just random, and that there's a lot of power in this uh, realization, and that can really spark the imagination and deepen our sense of understanding of who we are, what we are, as we are. And it can also help inform our choices, what we will to do and will not do. So this is really important. And in the process of living one's life, you just see some amazing order here. that could be replicable, that can be regenerative. And there's a lot of zeal, a zeal for, wow, I really want to put this into practice. And I need to release all the limiting thoughts and emotions that hold me back in a bad way. So these are the 12 powers, and of course the power of life itself, which includes everything here. So each and every plateau of needs is a huge opportunity when seen with an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, what do I mean by that? That's seeing challenges as opportunities in disguise, using your imagination, using your 12 powers. It's about seeing the health and wellness opportunity, not only for yourself. Now, this is really important to me. I had a kind of a wake up call several years ago when I had congestive heart problems and had to have quad bypass heart surgery. And 3 cents later, at age 79, I realized that this incident really punctuated my life. So to make every remaining moment on the earth plane count. And I feel blessed because there's so many opportunities here. There's the technology opportunity here. I'm meeting with you over Zoom and over YouTube, um, with some amazing technology that's pretty low cost. It's big reach and has the potential, really learning richness that can bring the whole world together here. And I'm also meeting inside of architecture, virtual architecture. Now, most people think of architecture as physical world buildings, right? Or or maybe software architecture. But usually the common understanding is architecture as buildings. Buildings cost a lot of money. They also have and a lot of supplemental costs to them, powering the buildings, the driving back and forth to the building, go to work, whatever. So there's a virtual opportunity here that is new, meeting inside of virtual architecture like Zoom. I'm actually have been working with a platform called Verbella, which has actually had virtual building, has been like a metaverse. And metaverses are being developed now that allow us to meet with people from all across the planet inside this virtual architecture. And there's a huge educational opportunity. Life is a giant classroom. Culture is a giant classroom. Humanity is a giant classroom. And by including all these different pockets of knowledge, we can really improve ourselves. We can get our living situation. Um, this can be a whole lot of good by continuing to educate ourselves. That's why I am an instructional designer and the chief learning officer at New World Communications, my consulting practice, actually practicing this. And there's a cultural opportunity here of inclusion of everybody. And at one time, the United States was kind of a welcoming place, but what has happened is now you've got this change of trying to be exclusive and looking for people that uh, are not excluding people that are people of color, foreigners and all that kind of stuff, and that's really not going to be sustainable. So there's a social opportunity to change that situation. A lot of people blame what's going on capitalism. I think you need to get more clear that maybe monopoly capitalism is a problem, but maybe a social capitalism, one that has some safeguards in it that happened around the New Deal that started Social Security and later became added Medicare and all of this. There's a huge opportunity for transformation here, particularly we have to think about that with AI coming on and replacing work. What's going to happen to the people? You have the revenue generated, but maybe that needs to flow to more people. So there's an economic and environmental opportunity. There's the economic justice for uh, diverse, equity creating inclusion in everything. And that's includes environmental change and action, climate action industries even. And of course, there's the needy opportunity. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here over YouTube here and my channel called Navigating Your Unretired Life. This is a great opportunity for you to subscribe to my channel. There's a button right here. If you see it, you click on that, and that way you won't miss different programs as they come out. And there's also an opportunity to learn about navigating your unretired life. I've made a guide for that. So if you enter a guide in the comments, I will then send you the link to that, and you can download that guide, which gets you started. I'm actually developing an online course called Navigating Your Unretired Life, and I'm really, reaching out to people to learn about, like where they are now in their life, and where they need to go, okay, and to try to figure out quality assurable steps to get there from where you are now to where you might be. It could be economic problems. Um, the fact is in the United States, almost half the people who are going into retirement do not have enough money to comfortably live out the rest of their lives without having some kind of supplemental income. And that's what I'm here to help you with, to show you net new opportunities that are really fun and really gainful. And there's the transportation opportunity here. Now, most people are thinking about transportation. So far, the conversation has been about whether it's gas cars, or, fossil fuel or EV, electrical vehicles. There's also something called virtual transportation. If you have virtual architecture that's omnipresent everywhere, that's anywhere there's access to the internet, you can get there and get back just by logging on. That's kind of, I call that virtual transportation. You're kind of riding the electrons to get there and get back. Think of the amazing cost savings and advantages of meeting that way. And it could just really change the planet. And then this gets right into my virtual enterprise, New World Communications. That's the link up there, which I invite you to look at. Well, I formed this in 1997 after leaving KCTS Public Television in distance learning, because there was a whole new world of internet communications to be seized. And I wasn't getting any younger, so I grabbed that brass ring and ran and didn't look back. And it's been a great ride here. So this is what I'm doing right now in 2025. Explainer video services are a new opportunity, new revenue generation opportunity, and a change opportunity for creating um, cartoon-like stories that explain things here. It's a great technology that you can choose your cartoon type characters. You can choose scenes, you can have behaviors, you write the script, and then you hit a button and it creates the whole video. Wow. So I invite you to go over here when you go to my website, click on this image here, and you'll see some examples of that. I create a multiple story with my CEO Dave, one of my characters here in his fictional ABC Corp. And then there's virtual focus groups and strategic planning services. I actually have him read our some of our articles on LinkedIn, enough to encourage him to visit us and start getting into doing some virtual focus groups and strategic planning sessions to help him get on point and be spot on with his company. He came to us with a whole plate full of issues that we could then solve by with each one of our services. One of the services that I'm doing right now is YouTube programming and channel development. Again, I'm focused now on 65 plus and 55 plus. The 65 plus people on YouTube compose about 90% of all YouTube viewers. Yet there's no channel. Wow. So this is a huge opportunity, as an entrepreneur. Even though you don't see any channels, and it says you can say only 9%, but 9% is 9% of millions of people. So this is a huge opportunity here, and everybody ages. And then there are workshops and courses. Recently, I've been doing some physical world workshops in using YouTube to grow business. And also, I learned that some of the people in my class, and most of them, didn't have the ability, and even though they had broadcast quality smartphones, they didn't have that made, HDV and ultra HD content. They didn't have the mentality, they didn't have the literacy to produce decent video, decent television. And so that's what I've been doing. I'm now going to take that online so I can reach more people. So workshops and courses, and then every one of these services that you see, I will eventually be doing courses on that. So these are really net new revenue generation opportunities for you. And even though there might be discrimination against you as an older person, I can actually take that advantage and say, hey, look, this is for us. Then work with us and we won't discriminate. We'll also include younger people. We'll need them, but we can actually lead this puppy and do this. And that's part of a mobilization campaign that we're doing right now through our mobilization campaign services. And we'll talk about that and what that looks like. And that will arrive at virtual conferences and trade shows. And we have an actual trade show service. We've actually developed a whole platform on our website to do that very affordably, ultra affordably, at radically reducing the time and cost to do conferences and trade shows by doing them virtually and doing them in a hybrid world way. A lot of people then come to us and say, Johnson, this is incredible what you're doing. I mean, it's so comprehensive. You're doing more with your instructional design services than we've seen ever in our own company or enterprise. We want you to do this. We want you to help us get there. And we also do physical world live event streaming services. People will say, yeah, but we've invested in our national sales conference and we have, people that go, we send a core group of people to this every year. And we pay a lot of money to create shows that we can't back out of because other industry people are in it. But could we live stream that so we can have more attendance, more engagement, and then possibly more sales? Absolutely. And then the whole thing is designed to develop global strategic partnerships. We are building that. Everything that we do has to do with that in mind, of reaching out to people across different barriers, communities, cultures, genders, generations, and bringing people together. Inclusiveness. Okay. And here's a little bit of more information about our mobilization campaign services. And step one is for people to get enabled. Thank goodness to COVID, in that it forced people, if they needed to do business, they needed to meet online over Zoom or some other platform. So they had to get enabled. And once you're enabled, now you can start to meet. Now people have not mastered that. And so there's been a lot of bad news about horrible meetings over Zoom. But we know how to do that better because of our broadcast background and our communications background. So the step two is to actually do business over these platforms. And that is really neat. This whole thing, if you go and visit our website, you'll see it's like tentpole marketing, starting with getting enabled all the way to arriving at conferences and trade shows. But these are the steps that we go through. And another step is being social. I've actually met people. I've actually developed relationships with people over Zoom. I've never been with them physically ever, but we've really, been able to not only get social, but also do business together. It's been really amazing. And of course, using YouTube to grow business and virtual business casuals. These are really fun events. We haven't seen anyone do them yet. but we will be the first on the block to do this. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And involving the world in conversations that still need to be had. There are initial series of critical conversations that need to be had between tribes of people, between groups of people. I've noticed here that, even with important events like climate change, it's just like the whites kind of get together. Black people are thinking about something else or something or what to do about that. But working together is something, and needing a conversation to meet some of the challenges and obstacles of making a more inclusive culture. That's why that book is so important to kind of study and to kind of take it further in year 2025. And then there are virtual boot camps. So midway along the way, as getting people to be ready in virtual conferences and trade shows, there are some new skills to do as registrants, as presenters, as virtual exhibitors, as virtual communicators with video and different things, um, you know, with booth creation. All of that stuff is really, really important to make this, by the time you arrive at a virtual conference and trade show, it's really, really good. The technology is not in the way. And that we then arrive at the virtual conference and trade show. Other outcomes of this process we envision is a world-class consulting practice. So if you're a consultant or if you're doing anything that you can consult with people, really get with me. Talk to me, I'm going to give out my contact information at the end of this, so stick with me because I'd love to learn about what you're doing and even showcase you on one of my shows. I'm over Zoom right now. I have 100 seats. So I could do some amazing things here to promote your business, your culture, your consulting practice, whatever you're doing. And I envision also a prime time interactive reality television show done, like say, that's going to show up on Netflix or one of the streaming services here that is about some really positive change, not old Donald Trump doing the apprentice, but about us making change, mending the planet in there, on multiple continents even. We can bring in B-roll into these things. It is going to be really interactive, meaning that it's not just uh, you as a passive viewer, as a critical viewer, but you can also be a critical doer if we train and empower you to produce some of the content over Zoom or over your cell phone. So this is a new way, and there are a whole net new social and educational ventures that we know are going to come out of this, that'll spin off out of this. So here's a little bit more about our virtual business casuals. These are broadcast quality live streamed events at local restaurant happy hours in the same time zones. Just think about it. Restaurant owners love the physical world traffic that drives sales of more food and drink. This is an important opportunity to support and promote worthy causes, driving volunteering, fundraising, and nonprofit capacity building. It promotes upcoming events in the mobilization campaign. And these events, when done right, can be really, really fun. And that's what our intent is. And then let's talk about virtual conferences and trade shows. They culminate our mobilization campaigns that we've been talking about. People almost instantly get there from across the planet just by logging in, and they get back just by logging off. No travel, no expenses, no per diem costs. This radically saves time and money. The virtual conference and trade show platform that we've developed supports multiple revenue streams. That's revenue from registration, revenue from rotating sponsor banners, revenue from virtual exhibitor services, revenue by developing custom virtual booths for some people, also limited time sales limited only sales opportunities. If you've ever been to a show, you've seen all the ways, different ways that they get your money. And imagine if you and your organization are doing that, what a net new source of revenue this could be as you reach and engage more people. So stick with me and call me. Again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, you're going to learn more about this by doing that. And this is a huge global relationship building opportunity. Um, Everybody from all over the planet can come together. We can do these shows on multiple continents at once. So you can have these pockets of physical world people at these physical world locations. But if you live stream the physical world events, you see this is massive. This is going to be better. This is going to be talking about climate change. This is to make a really much more democratic process to really get some change going here. So what we're really doing is building a world-class mobilization campaign that the world eventually will write home about with our explainer videos, services, with our virtual focus groups and strategic planning services, with our YouTube programming and channel development, with our workshops and courses, with our mobilization campaign services, with our virtual conference and trade show service, with our instructional design services, physical world live streaming services, and global strategic partnership building services, which basically take advantage of the whole enchilada. So our vision and theme could be creating a world that works for all. I'm going to reach out to Sharif Abdullah and say, Sharif, let me help. And see where he's coming from on where he's doing now. I looked at him, found him up on Wikipedia and discovered he's probably about 74 now. And so he's another potential elder that can be doing some amazing things. So I'll stop my share now. If you really like what I'm doing and you want to get some ideas and more guide about the direction I'm going on, navigating your unretired life, as I mentioned before, I have a free downloadable guide that if you, in the comments, if you put guide here, um, I can then send you back a link to that where you can then uh, get that downloadable guide, and that will get you started. That will eventually help inform as part of a course called Navigating Your Unretired Life that we're doing under development. But we're doing it very, very carefully to make sure that it's going to be absolutely exactly what you need to get from where you are now to where you want to go. And I think that is going to be really, really a lot of fun. It'll be online. So tell people about that. So join the thing. Also make your comments here and share this with other people. And I'm the real deal. I'm the guy who's going to help us all get there with your help, working together in an amazing kind of way. If you need to call or talk to me, you can text or call me at 206-920-8067. You can email me at support@newworldcom.com. You can visit my website at www.newworldcom.com and look at our resources there. And let's talk. What's on your mind? Where are you in this process of navigating your unretired life? What are some of your challenges that we could help you with? I mean, but we've learned by working together and pointing you to different resources and different people, you can get there sooner and better and more qualitatively, more gainfully than by working alone. So thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you.